Welcome to episode 1 of Agents to Owners, a series that will provide you with a glimpse through the eyes of real estate agents who have become successful real estate investors. And my name's Tyler Roicki, and I'm going to be hosting this. Today I've got an interview with a very special guest from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'll get more to that in a moment. But in this series, these are men and women who are going to be on the brink of creating lasting financial freedom within their businesses and ultimately creating a legacy for their families. And something that has intrigued me ever since getting started in the real estate industry is how few real estate agents actually leverage their expertise to invest in real estate outside of their primary residence. As real estate agents and brokers, I firmly believe that we are as well equipped as anyone to build wealth in real estate. And with the kind of access that we have to market data and ultimately deals, I really believe it's something that more of us should leverage. So I'm hoping that this series will open the door to those who are listening into it and open your mind to what you can do beyond just your day-to-day activities as a real estate agent to build wealth in your lives. And with that being said, I would like to introduce our first guest to the show. Willie Mandrell is the owner and operator of the Mandrell Company, an investment brokerage in Boston, Massachusetts that currently partners with about 30 agents, most of whom have become real estate investors as well. He started out as a real estate investor and began building up his personal investment portfolio prior to launching his brokerage. Willie's early experience in real estate instilled him with a belief that there had to be something different than simply working as an agent to facilitate transactions. And I'm excited to dive into Willie's story to learn how he's leveraging his experience as both a real estate investor and a broker to help more agents make that leap into the investment space. So Willie, I'd really like to thank you for joining me on this interview. I'm super excited we were able to connect through Instagram to set this up. So, for starters, how did you get started in real estate? And, out of all the things you could have done at that point in time, why investment real estate?
Sure. So, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for the introduction. But real estate, I got started. My grandparents were in the business. My grandparents were investors, early 50s, did pretty well for themselves here in Boston. But what really kind of launched it for me and kind of took it to the next level. I actually got out of college, went to Northeastern here in Boston, and was studying for the CFA exam. For those of you who are not familiar, it's chartered financial analyst. It's stockbrokers and other people that analyze stocks typically get it. But when I was studying for the exam, not that I wasn't familiar with it, but they kept harping on the idea of inflation. And inflation is, just reducing your purchasing power, right? So if inflation, the average cost of goods are going up every year by 3%, your bread, your milk, your household items, and you're making a salary and not making the equivalent of that, right? So if you're making 50 grand, but you're not getting a 3% cost of living increase every year, you're actually losing purchasing power over time, right? That's kind of the way inflation eats away at your purchasing power. And through that, I figured, okay, well, how do you combat that? How do you, figure out a way to keep up with inflation? And the only way to do that is to invest. Kind of taking you down this train of thought. And if you say, okay, well, I know inflation exists and I know I have to, kind of keep up with inflation or outpace it. That means I have to invest. Well, what do I invest in? And then I looked at my options out there and I was like, the stock market is one. That's where the majority of people go. And then you have really kind of just obscure options like gold and antiques and collectibles and stuff like that. And just kind of, you really have to have either a lot of money or a lot of experience to get into those fields. And then there's real estate. And with my grandparents having their background and encouraging me to go into it and it making financial sense. I like real estate. It's a tangible asset. It's an improvable asset. Whereas I put $1,000 or $2,000, $10,000 in Facebook, I'm really, my well-being or my retirement is determined on how well Mark Zuckerberg runs his company, right? I wanted something that I was a little bit more in control of, and I felt like real estate was just that. So I loved it because I can improve it. I can increase rents. I could pay down the debt. It was just something I know that I could control a little bit more. So you take the history with my grandparents and their success, coupled with my, the college education and that CFA exam, and it just kind of launched me right into the business. It just made financial sense to me.
Oh, wow. That's a really awesome thing to realize. I mean, I hear a lot of people getting started with real estate, and I don't think I've heard that one yet. Just the whole idea of, the fact that inflation will eat away at anything you build over time, and just looking at the different vehicles you could potentially invest in to overcome that. And then obviously something in addition to that. So that's really awesome. And that was while you were in college?
Right after college. So I actually bought my first multifamily right out of college. I think I was 23 at the time. So I was already in the business, but what kind of like really just kind of like I want to do this full time. I was working in the corporate world in the financial services industry. 2008 hit, stock market crash, housing market not too far below, behind that. And it was like, I really wanted to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I figured, well, the economy was crap, I might as well, take a chance and say, okay, well, if this is it, then let's go ahead with it. And if not, then let's figure something out. And that's actually when I got my real estate license, because I loved the idea of, getting rent checks. I was paying down my mortgage, and I really wanted to see how can I get into this, full time. And having that corporate job didn't allow me to, immerse myself in the market. So I just said, let's do it. I dropped the job, got my real estate license, and I figured if I worked with other investors, other developers, other investors, and surrounded myself with that as a clientele as well, it would actually twofold. It would help me generate commissions, and then also to provide me with the education that I needed to build my portfolio as well.
That's really neat. That's actually exactly why I got into the business as well. Just I saw those two opportunities to really build my education and just working in the business and really learning all the ins and outs of it. And then also obviously as a source of revenue. So I just thought it was such an awesome thing that, you could pretty much learn by doing it. So that's pretty neat. And I think that's a great reason to get started for, anyone who is listening to this. If you're not in the business already, that's something to consider right there. So ultimately you did end up taking that, those first investments you made, and getting your license. And then at some point along the way, you decided that you wanted to, kind of be a leader for others and not really just do your own thing, right?
Yeah. So I really, it was no direct plan. It was no plan. It just kind of happened. I worked for a couple of brokerages myself, and then decided I wanted to open up my own brokerage. And it was more or less just so I could take control of, the things that were happening. I thought I was a, high producing agent, and wanted to steer my career in the direction that I wanted to go versus the brokerage that I worked for. No problem with any of those prior brokerages, just wanted to control my destiny just a little bit more. And when I did that, there was a couple agents or a couple of friends that I knew that said, hey, can I come work with you? And, join the team. And it just kind of grew organically from there. And from there, it just turned into me, myself, to a couple other people. And then all of a sudden we were a full-time real estate brokerage. And when we started putting things together, I took some things from brokerages that I liked, some things that I didn't like, but continued to build the business around that investment property model. We really wanted to differentiate ourselves from the Keller Williams or the Coldwell Bankers of the world and say, how do we, the Mandrell Company, define ourselves? What is our elevator pitch? What is that thing that differentiates us from every other agent in the market? And it was our expertise in that multifamily space, right? So a lot of our agents are investors themselves, soon to be investors, aspiring investors. So just anybody in that has that interest. I think it's a little different than being in the suburbs and selling a single family home or a condo in the city, than the mentality and the expertise that you have to have when you're working with an investor who's more about cap rates and cash flow and everything else. So creating that niche, I think, really helped us, expand to where we are today.
Yeah, and working with investors is very niche. A lot of agents, I mean, it's not something you really know as an agent unless you've either done it or you've been around someone who does it.
Right.
And um, so I think it's really neat that you carved out a niche with that. So I'm curious to know, what specifically are you doing in your brokerage to help your agents get started investing if they've never done it before?
Sure. So we do a lot of the traditional trainings. I look at real estate now as more virtual than anything. We don't have the classroom setup where we have 25 people come in and sit down in front of a green a screen and train them with slides. We have I send out a weekly training video. I'm trying to get it out to bi-weekly, and it's everything from a 2 minute, hey, what is a cap rate, to different marketing techniques, to anything else that, how do you fill out certain contracts. And it's basically drip to the agents on a regular basis. We also do lunch and learns with mortgage brokers. So we have a local mortgage broker come in, sit down, talk about new mortgage products, because a lot of the investment side, is how do you get these things financed. And if you can educate your clients on successfully securing financing, I think you can close a lot more deals that way. But the biggest thing that we do is I run a networking and educational platform called Boston Wealth Builders, and we encourage our agents to come to a lot of those meetings as well. And what Boston Wealth Builders is we'll have those sit-down seminars where we'll talk for 90 minutes or 2 hours about everything from getting that financing to getting pre-approved to property management, to the concerns of being a landlord, to here in Boston we have lead paint concerns, and different things that may not be in other neighborhoods. And then we also have what we call rehab tours. So we'll take the group out, 30, 40, 50 people, to one of the projects that myself or another investor is working on, and show the new agent, or just another member of the group, what did we buy the property for? What did it cost us to do the repairs? What is it going to be worth afterward? What are we expecting for rents? So we're really getting on site and providing that education to our agents as well as other investors in the community has really been a great piece of the growth of our business.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because that's constantly getting you out there in front of people in the community who are very interested in investing. So that's pretty. I could see how that's worked really well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been, just like you said, it's not only a training aspect for our training piece for our agents, but also lead generation, and just I'm a big believer in providing education. If you're continuing to go out there and educate the public about what you're doing and opportunities for them, then it'll all turn around and come back at you at some point.
Yeah, just providing that value up front and giving and just eventually, if it turns into a working relationship, great. I think that's really the best way. Whatever the strategy is, I think it's always important to be a giver up front and just be providing that value up front, because I feel like if we're not doing that, it could be a good prospective client, but how do they even know how we are or what we really do offer if we're not willing to give value up front and show them, what we're willing to provide them and help them with. So, you're just all about adding that value up front, I can see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's phenomenal. So, what are some things for newer investors? What are some things that you would say they should consider off the bat, especially getting started?
Newer investors, I can tell you networking is just super important. You're going to learn more from other people in the business, and not just people that are, what you would describe as above you or doing better than you, just from anyone. And, like I said, just connections and just getting out there and just telling everyone what you do. I'm a real, kind of a book guy when it comes to this stuff. I spent the first couple of years of my career, first few years of my career, just reading everything, Robert Kiyosaki and Tim Ferriss and everyone under the sun, in terms of business and real estate. And it was great. I knew a lot of cap rates and cash flow and all return on investment, but my business was still struggling and the growth of my portfolio was struggling because it wasn't necessarily that all the books that get you over the hump. It's who do you know? And that's still, it's cliche, but it's still very true. It's the connections to your financing. It's the connections to different property managers who have deals that are not necessarily put on MLS or with your local real estate agent. So just talk to everyone. If you're really committed to being an investor, then go out there and tell everyone, from your family to your friends to your spheres of influence to anyone who will listen. I've made more connections and made more money, not only on the agent side, but on the investor side, from Super Bowl parties and birthday parties and things where I wasn't expecting to necessarily go out and network. So when I say networking, I mean not just your typical BNI networking meetings. I mean anyone who will listen. If you're sitting at the bar, drum up a conversation and tell people what you're going to do. And I guarantee you, if you do that, deals are going to come your way, opportunities are going to come your way, money is going to come your way. You're really passionate about that. And then number two, I would say, find your niche. And we just talked about it. I think a lot of new real estate agents and new investors, they get out there and they try to, first let's take it from the real estate side. There's commercial, there's industrial, there's residential, there's suburban, there's urban, there's condos, there's single. I don't, focus on the single family thing. Do I indirectly sell some things to family and friends? Yes, absolutely. But my marketing niche and the message that I'm putting out there is on that multifamily side. And I think you really need to, kind of tailor your message, find your client, and understand who that end buyer is. And then the same thing on the rental side or the investment side. I don't think that you as an investor should go out there and look at tax liens and go to the suburbs and invest in single family rentals, and then go to the city and in multifamily rentals. I really think you have to find your niche and learn it well. And I think that's where the money is made, in the nuances, in the cracks that most people don't see because you're kind of spread yourself too thin. I think as an investor, especially when you get to certain levels of success, you're going to have people coming to you from all different angles with different opportunities, shiny objects, I like to call them, Bitcoin and everything else. And that's great. If that's what you want to focus on, do that. But I think at some point you really have to narrow it in and become a commercial investor, a multifamily, a city multifamily, or whatever it may be, investor, and really focus in and and have that narrow niche. And if you do that, those two things, I think you'll be successful as a new investor.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's easy to overcomplicate it when you're getting started. At the end of the day, it's really about networking. It's about having conversations with people about what it is you want or what it is you do, and finding a way, especially to provide value that's around that, and very least bring it up in conversation, because everyone's curious. I mean, it's a very common thing. You meet someone new, what do you talk about? What's your name? What do you do? Like that's really common. And if you ask someone what they do, there's going to be reciprocity pretty much automatic most of the time, because what else, like, how do you get to know someone? That's really it. So it's very natural. That's a very natural way that anyone you can meet knows what you're interested in. And you never know. I mean, you talk to enough people, someone's going to be like, oh yeah, like I actually know of someone that has that. Or if not, it's just your foot in the door of a potentially good relationship. Because I was even on a networking call with some of my guys last night, and that's one of the things I told them. It's like, any room you're in, you never know what kind of opportunities in there unless you talk to people. I mean, you could have a phenomenal connection you can make in there, and you didn't even know it if you didn't make a point of meeting people. So very awesome advice, I think.
Yeah, so at the last time, if I can just add to one thing, is just the longevity. I think too many agents and investors get into the business, they read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they say, hey, this is for me, and then they're 9 months into it, a year into it, and they're like, this is not working, I'm not getting the leads, and then they're out of the game, they're on to something else. And a lot of times that you have that conversation at the bar and you build some rapport, that person, real estate doesn't trade like most things, right? I mean, it takes some time for people to decide they want to sell and everything else. So it might be a year. I have people coming back to me and say, hey, we had a conversation 2 years ago, I'd like to join your brokerage. Hey, we've had a conversation 2 years ago, I have this multifamily I'm looking to sell, I got your postcard 3 years ago. I mean, I literally had a guy, I didn't even look like that anymore, I'm bald now, I had hair when he showed me the postcard. So sometimes it takes time for things to happen. And I think a lot of new agents, they get frustrated, new investors, they get frustrated and they get out of the business a lot, too quickly. You really have to have that patience and that tenacity to stay in, and good things will happen. This is a great business.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I'd say to the listeners, just like Willie says, it's important to just decide if this is what you want, if real estate's what you want, and that's the vehicle you're going to use to build wealth, especially, and you decided that, it's not a matter if it's going to work. It's a matter if you're going to persist enough to make it work.
Absolutely.
That's really what it is. If you have the mindset that you're just going to see if it works, it's the wrong mindset. You've got to adjust and realize it's really about what you do. It's the activities. And if you feel like you don't know what to do, it's just about connecting with the right people who are doing it in your market and learning from them and then implementing it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So how do you determine whether a property is a good deal? Kind of a basic question, but it's going to help the newer guys as well on that one, because it's easy to get lost in all the numbers and everything you could look at with it. So how do you decide?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think there's a couple different things that, people produce through real estate. And again, I would say the first thing that it really bugs me is I love Bigger Pockets. I'm a huge fan of their platform, but you see often on there that everyone counts doors, right? Everyone's saying, I just picked up 57 doors or 60 doors or whatever it may be. And there's automatically this assumption of success by the number of doors. So I would encourage your listeners to not do that. You can have 60 doors and be making less money or being less successful than somebody who has 6 doors in a better cash flow neighborhood or something like that. So doors is a no. Appreciation. I don't invest for appreciation. I think it's the wrong way. Appreciation is kind of the icing on the cake. So to get to your answer is cash flow. What does the building produce? And if it's producing the right amount of cash flow here in Boston, we have a lot of 3 families or triple deckers. We have, I try to get 2 units to cover all of my expenses, meaning taxes, insurance, mortgage, everything else, and be cash flowing from that last unit. So our typical rent here is roughly $2,000 a month. So typically when I'm buying a 3 family, I'm looking for about $2,000 a month. And, I kind of measure that, based on that. So cash flow, I guess, would be your answer. That is the metrics I would look more closely to. A lot of people, throw out the words cap rate there and everything else. If you're a new investor and a lot of terminology is intimidating, I would basically say real estate is actually very simple, especially on the investing in the buy and hold side. You have income. How much rent are you getting? You have $2,000 a unit, 3 units at $6,000. You have expenses. You have a mortgage, taxes, insurance, water, and everything else that you have. If you have, different things of trash in your municipality, you add up all those expenses, you add up your income, and hopefully your income exceeds your expenses. That's all real estate investing is. You're putting a down payment in, you're going to get financing, your income exceeds your expenses, that's cash flow, and you want to get as much cash flow as possible. That's really, it's that simple. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Okay, great. Yeah, that simplifies it, I feel like, a lot. So is now a good time? What do you say to purchase a rental property? What would you say about that?
Yeah, I would say, I think anytime. I think there's always opportunity. I don't think there's ever a market where there's good and there's bad. There's always opportunity. You just have to, I would say right now, and again, I can't speak to the majority of the country, but I assume that the majority of us are in a seller's market, meaning there is less inventory than there are buyers, right? We have more buyers out there. We probably have 10 buyers here in Boston, or maybe more for every 1 property that hits the market. So in this market, you just have to be patient. You just have to be cautious about what you buy. If you're a new investor, for someone new, they're going to be anxious. I want to make that first purchase. I want to make it before 2019 is over. I want to get it before the summer. I would say patience is important. There's still great deals out there, still opportunity out there. Here in Boston, I'm probably purchasing 1 property for every 20 deals that I go to look at and seriously consider, right? I'm crunching numbers. I'm going to look at the property. I'm probably submitting an offer. The offer is getting rejected or the numbers don't work. So I'm buying 1 for every 20. I'm not going out there and just kind of, just purchasing everything. I think in this market, you just have to be cautious. So yes, so to answer your question, yes, there's still great deals. It's just, like I said, taking a little time to find them.
Got it. Yeah. So not being too eager to jump the gun and just knowing the numbers with it and all that helps. I'd
Yes.
say.
Yes, setting a standard for yourself, or just setting a objective for yourself, right? If I purchase a property, I want to get $1,000 a door, or 500 bucks a door, or whatever it may be, or I want to get a certain cash flow number, and just staying true to that and going out and finding you're gonna get a lot of no's and a lot of rejection, and the offer didn't get accepted or whatever it may be, but um, understanding that you're gonna have to stay true to what you're doing, not get too excited. It's better, and again, kind of cliche in the real estate world, but you make your money going in. You make your money on the buy side, not the sell side. You don't wait for appreciation. You have to buy right, and if you do that, then you'll be a successful investor.
Yeah, I agree. That's what it's about. So what about as far as education for people who, again, are just getting started and want to learn more about the business? Do you have any tips for them, or even any recommendations where they should look to for training, if anything?
Sure. I would say number one is we just talked about it. Number one is getting out there and learning from your peers, learning from the people that are in the business. I try to get to every networking event I can, every seminar I can. So I would say get out there and find your on Bigger Pockets. They have your local RIAs, your local real estate investor meetings. Go out there and find one that's local to you and just attend and talk to people and meet as many people as you can. We all offer something. You know a ton that I don't, and vice versa. And just having this conversation, I'm going to learn some things. So just getting out there and talking to as many people as possible about the business. And then, I try to, and don't just stick to your local markets. I mean, I try to go to seminars in other cities and towns and everything else as well. So I hop on eventbrite.com, meetup.com, and just figure out what's going on with local, business meetings in my neighborhood, real estate meetings in my neighborhood. And I would say the first part of the, like I said, business meetings, because real estate at the end of the day is business. It's not just learning how to buy property, but when you start talking about buying within an LLC and learning tricks and trades of the mortgage business, all that stuff is going to help you be a better investor. So just going out there and just kind of looking at marketing, mortgages, property management, and all the things that surround being an investor. Try to get out to those meetings and learn as much as you can as well. I spend a ton of time on YouTube, downloading it. I have as many videos as I possibly can and kind of watching what other investors are doing. There's plenty of information out there. You just have to, just really just, want it, I guess, at the end of the day is the thing that's needed.
Yeah, that's great. So it's not even necessarily anything you'd have to pay for. It's just getting out there and getting in touch with the right people and learning from people doing it locally, right?
Yeah, there's nothing that you necessarily need to pay for. If you want to get to Grant Cardone or one of the gurus, then you're gonna need to pay for a ticket. But for the most part, there is enough information on the internet to get anyone started. I mean, once you get to a certain level in your career where you need that specialized information, sometimes you're gonna have to go to those specialty conferences and pay for it. But for the most part, you're buying your first, second, third, fourth multifamily or investment property. There's enough information on YouTube to get anyone started.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's phenomenal with the internet, the kind of resources we have. I mean, it's not something 30 years ago that anyone had access to. I mean, at that point, you really had to know people who were doing it and learn from them. I mean, nowadays you can almost learn vicariously through people just by whatever content they're putting out. So I think that's such an awesome thing. And it's something that we all should be taking advantage of to some extent. As far as you're running the brokerage, you're actively investing in properties, you're helping agents become investors as well. What are your plans going forward with your business, kind of looking out into the future with it?
Just continue to grow what we already have. I mean, to continue to grow the business, the brokerage, continue to grow the group, Boston Wealth Builders, and just, like I said, as we add members and continue to spread our message. I think the only thing that we may break into, and that is not immediately on the path, is providing more education, on different platforms, more video training, more seminars and stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to be any different than what we're already doing. So I guess the short answer is just continue to grow, continue to get our message out there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good thing you got going. So, any final words of maybe advice, wisdom, anything else you want to share to the listeners on here while we're still on?
Sure. I mean, I guess final words would be real estate's a great business. We mentioned it. You know, you have to have patience. You have to have that hunger. What I find is I run into a lot of people on the agent side and on the investor side that again read something, see something, and it's just this short-term mindset. I think, and we see it a lot in my generation and just in society today. Is everyone wants something, but they don't want it bad enough or badly enough to wait for it. Everything is short-term gratification or instant gratification. I think that doesn't happen in real estate. It doesn't happen on the sales side with your career, and it's definitely not going to happen on the investment side. So if you have a little patience and you stay hungry, I think anybody can be successful in this business.
Oh yeah, yeah, I totally agree. You've just got to want it and stick with it. But anyway, we can conclude our interview with that. And I'd like to thank all of the audience for tuning in and listening to this episode of Agents to Owners. And, especially big thanks to Willie for taking his time to sit down with us and just share his insights into the business. And if anyone wants to look you up, where would be the best place to find you to connect?
Sure. You can find us at mandrellco.com. It's MANDRELLCO.com. Or that's our brokerage website, or the Boston Wealth Builders is just bostonwealthbuilders.com. That's our group. If you have anybody that's local to the New England area, we'd love to have them in. And Todd, I just want to say thanks for having me. This has been great, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise. It's been very nice talking with you. I'm super happy to have the connection now. And I'll look forward to probably being in touch in the future.
Definitely. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks again, Willie.
All right. Thanks, Todd.